Hey guys, so today, if this cow will be quiet for a second, I don't know if you guys can hear that. He's just going nuts. So today I wanted to start kind of a new playlist on our channel. It's one that Shauna and I have discussed for some time. And hold on, there is a horse sniffing the camera. Yeah, hold on. Oh, you need some fly spray, dude. Okay, sorry about that, I had to move. Anyway, so we've been discussing having a new playlist on the channel. I mean, we have a lot of different playlists. All of our playlists, our main playlists, are labeled with kind of a little bit of branding. So we have a little bit of a symbol down in the corner somewhere on the thumbnail. That way our viewers know when we post something, whether or not it's something of interest to them. For example, Ranch Hand Tips is all about kind of working on outdoor projects. Trade Tips are more home renovation. Dogwood Darling is chick stuff with Shauna. So this is a playlist that I wanted to put together, and some of you may not be interested in it, some of you may. So if you see the As a Man Thinketh logo, you know it's going to be a video somewhat along these lines. I wanted to keep things separated so that, you know, some of our viewers who aren't interested in hearing what I have to say don't have to listen to it, but they should. So, flies, these flies. Anyway, this playlist is a place where I can go and kind of share my thoughts on some things, hopefully be helpful to some people if I can be. And I have put this off and put this off and put this off, but driving around this past week, and I don't want you guys to think that we're making our channel all about Hurricane Florence. This is about Yanasama Ranch and our community, what's going on around us. And right now, that is kind of a big thing that's going on around us. But this video in particular, while it's inspired by what I've been seeing as I've been driving around our community, it has a much greater meaning, something that anybody can turn to when they are dealing with this type of situation, and that is the concept of financial disaster. When I've been driving around looking at some of these homes or situations that people are going through, and I watch things out further east in North Carolina, the initial thought comes that I could not possibly imagine being in those people's shoes, because it's really very hard to imagine that. Even the process of, for those who have the insurance resources and things like that to get back on their feet, it is astronomical, and the financial burden would feel like a financial disaster, which in some ways it is. Several years ago, some of you know this, some of you don't know this. If you've watched our channel for a while, you probably have a pretty good idea of this, but we were building a house and we had some issues with building the house, and we pretty much had to rebuild the entire thing, which we didn't have the funds to do. But we continued to stick with it, and during the process, Shauna became pregnant and was put on bed rest. So she was unable to work, she lost her job. And because of the funding for the house, her needing somebody to take care of her, I ended up staying home from work, which, being self-employed, absolutely kind of destroyed what I had going for work at the time. We were not in a great situation, but we were able to eventually press through the building of the house, and our son Abner was born. And with Abner came a little over $1 million worth of medical bills, of which Shauna's insurance wouldn't help cover. And it's very hard to get health insurance in a situation like that, because he was born a preemie. So we had kind of this mountain of financial debt to figure out. It really didn't seem like there was a way out of it, and in some ways we're still finding our way out of it. But I remember turning to somebody and was talking to them. It was for just some prayer help, some helpful thoughts that would help me through it. And the first thing that they said to me was, "Do you have everything you need right now?" And I said, "Well, yes." And he said, if you think back in the past, have you always had everything you need? And I was like, "Well, yes." And he was like, "And life continues?" And I thought, yes. The truth is that we have always had everything that we needed supplied to us, and it's really kind of a divine right that we have, that supply is infinite to all of God's ideas, including animals, people, and sometimes that could be a very difficult thing to understand. To help you maybe view this in a different light, I wanted to talk a little bit about what exactly supply is. Supply isn't in and of itself a currency. In fact, if you're looking at currency as supply, you're looking in all the wrong places, because currency was actually developed by an Asian warlord. The first person to use a paper currency or a government currency was an Asian warlord. This guy was chopping off people's heads, and he developed currency for the sole purpose of retaining control over his kingdom and retaining control over the trade of the kingdom. If that doesn't sound familiar to you, I don't know what does. But currency in and of itself is not supply, but it can be seen as an abundance of, if you have an abundance of it, it is a symbol of supply, an abundance of supply. Something I've learned over the years, and this has taken a lot of humility. Shauna and I both came from very good jobs, and to have to learn the humility to move forward from where we were, it was probably more difficult than understanding where supply actually comes from. Supply comes in many forms and symbols, but it is actually more of an action than it is a substance, although substance is part of supply. When you're thinking about supply and you're thinking about your finances and you're thinking about what you don't have, I want you to start looking at supply as what you do have. If supply is something that you feel needs to come in, it's also something that you can put out. Going out and utilizing what you do have, your skill sets, your knowledge, your abilities, and pushing that back out into the community is offering as much of a wealth of supply as the supply coming into you. When you're thinking of a financial disaster, you're thinking of a supply disaster, a substance disaster of some sort. And again, currency, if you don't like my warlord example, think of it this way. It changes every second of the day. I used to be a currency trader. There is absolutely no value behind a dollar other than what the community puts behind it, which is that supply and that substance. So I want you to think about supply and substance as something that's completely different than a financial dollar bill. I don't want you to think about how much it's going to cost you to build your home or to take care of your mortgage and things like that you need to do. I want you to look at supply as a resource coming in and a resource that you're projecting out. And if you're looking at that from an ability of wealth and you are unable to see those resources coming in to make yourself wealthier, put those resources going out, because you're able to put out an abundance of supply at any given time. A story that I like, that I researched a lot during that time, is the Sermon on the Mount. So if you read in the Bible, and many of you may not be religious, we all come from different backgrounds, so to clarify that, I do have my own set of beliefs. We all have different set of beliefs. We all have faith, hopefully, and some may not. Some may just see the Bible as a book full of parables. And whether you look at this as a parable or you look at this as a story of what happened, it is a good story either way you look at it, and I think there's something we all can learn from it. So in Sermon on the Mount, Jesus told his disciples to drop everything that they had, to give up everything that they viewed as supply and substance, finances, everything. They weren't even allowed to walk out of there with water. And to go out and to teach the inspired word, or to teach his teachings, what he was trying to spread, to help the community, to help mankind. And these disciples, basically, that's what they were sent to do. They weren't allowed to ask for donations. They weren't allowed to ask for housing or shelter. They weren't allowed to ask for food. They weren't allowed to ask for anything. What came to them to survive while they were out teaching was given to them freely, just out of the goodness of people in the community, because they were doing something. So what Jesus was telling his disciples to do is go out with nothing but supply, and in return you'll be taken care of. And that's exactly what happened. And then as the disciples returned to Jesus, and this is when the Sermon on the Mount starts, multitudes of people followed them. And the disciples looked at Jesus and said, well, now what do we do? These people have taken care of us. We just let them out into the wilderness on this hilltop, and we have nothing for them. That's when you hear about the story of Jesus breaking the bread and feeding the multitudes of people with practically nothing. The supply was endless. It was full circle. It came all the way around. When you're thinking about dealing with these financial burdens and distresses, I want you to look at the infinite possibilities that you have of supply out there. And do not for a moment be afraid, because this is your divine right. This is something that you have a right to. Supply is something that is coming into you, and it is something that you are projecting out. It is a full circle. If you don't have the resources coming into you, then you should be going out and putting resources out. Just as you want supply coming in, you need to be putting supply out. Don't expect it, don't look for it, but go out and just express supply to somebody else. And I think what you'll find is that this phenomenon of supply, this ability to fill every human need, is something that never ends. It just continues on. And once you go out and search for that true meaning of what supply and substance is, you'll find it come into your life in so many ways that you didn't even expect. And I can honestly say that, you know, over the years, my wife and I never got back into the things that we were doing before. And it hasn't always been easy. But when I look around me and I look at my life now compared to my life when I was making a substantial amount of currency, I have so much more. It's so much more fulfilling. I have in every concept of material things, I have more things, even though that currency is missing. Don't look at these situations and be fearful of not being able to get through it. There has never been a moment of your life up till now when you haven't had what you've needed. And that's not going to change in the future. I think that our lives are the only thing we have as proof to what is to come. And that is the honest to God truth, is that everything has always been given to you that you've needed. And it will always continue to be given to you as needed. There is no other law other than that. I know that there are individuals out there who feel like they have nobody to rely on, that are completely alone, especially after a catastrophe like Hurricane Florence. I would urge you to listen to this message and look a little higher, and you will find everything that you possibly need. You are not alone out there. And you know, whether you're watching this video because you were in Florence or some other disaster in your life makes you feel like you are dealing with a financial wreckage, it's not possible, because the supply coming into you and the supply that you're able to put out is absolutely never ending. I think that there is a common phrase out there that says you have to spend money to make money. The same thing goes with supply. If you remove the money aspect, the currency aspect, and you're just looking at it as supply, and that supply is your substance, you have to spend it for it to come in. You want to be a part of the circle, and once you are, I think that everybody eventually will learn that what we consider wealth, currency, is really just an illusion. And that's honestly what currency is. It is an illusion, a social acceptance of something. It is not the actual substance of wealth. So that was my message for you for the first time on As a Man Thinketh. I mean, that is how I view finances, and that's how I've been able to get through some very difficult moments in my life, is just recognizing that these material concepts of things definitely don't outweigh the spiritual. And even, I think if you weren't a spiritually minded person, you could read the message that I gave you and take something from it. I try not to go too much into my religious preferences on our channel, and definitely try not to go into political preferences. There were some comments on one of our videos recently that people thought I was taking a political side in it, I think, but I try and stay as neutral as I can while also sharing some of the ways that I think through things, or what I have discovered that would possibly help somebody else who might be in a tough spot. So stay tuned. If you liked this type of message, I hope you click on more of our videos that have the As a Man Thinketh symbol. We've got lots more stuff coming up. I know that we'd like to get some videos out on and bring back some diversity to our channel, but we're also trying to put our energy towards doing what we can to help our community. So there will still be a bit of this other stuff filtering in, and that's just, you know, the reality of the location where we are. Our channel is about our lives on Yanasama Ranch and our community. We recently started a playlist called Meet My Neighbor, which we're trying to feature different local businesses on. It's really just a channel about us, and so we're sorry if we offend anybody who's just here for ranch hand tips, or just here for the trade tips, or just here for Dogwood Darling. Those are different categories of our channel, and we try and identify all of that with those symbols so that folks can enjoy those videos and not have to watch videos that they don't want to watch if they're turned off by anything.